really hard to hear.
Are you?
Yeah,
You're us.
here and there was a little bit. Wally, just to kind of piggyback with Tom there. If I'm a player and I want to get better, and am I being told by the coach, you know what, you're not going to be a AAA player. I'm just not going to invest any time with you. That if that's the case, I mean that's terrible. I mean,
Yeah.
if you've got somebody, like Tom said, if you got someone showing up to practice every day and they're putting in the time and effort, I would hope that the coach on the other end is also putting in the time and effort to make that player a better player. Because every player is not going to end up at the top of the mountain, so to speak.
Yeah.
But every player, if they're willing to work, can improve in some level, in some degree. So I would hope that coaches don't tell a player, you know what, I'm not going to focus on you, and it comes obvious if they don't, because you're not going to be elite. So why bother? I mean, that's to me, that's terrible.
Well, I don't think it's he doesn't focus on them. They earn the role they play, but they don't get an opportunity to play as often on special teams, particularly power play at 15.
So
That
that could end up being a player then that maybe realizes that, and then if they love the game, maybe they just go to another level where they will play more.
Okay.
I mean, I think there's that part of it too, right?
Okay.
That self-awareness, which is really tough for players, I think.
Yeah. Kim, hello. How are you?
I'm great, Wally. How are you?
Well, I'm home from Ottawa. I got to watch the PWHL 2 games, and
I know.
I came away so impressed with the quality of hockey, seeing it live. And what blew me away was watching them do their dryland work at pre-practice. The girls are athletes. They're fit. They're big and strong. I was surprised at how big and strong they were. And I'm not sure whether the female game's going to go to size now, and maybe overlook skill. But I've been told that the draft next year, the number 1 pick is going to be Sarah Fillier. So it's a heck of a league, and I think it's just going to get bigger and better.
Yeah, it's interesting, Wally. I've been to a couple games live, and it is, no different than I'm sure with pros, with the men. Like, it's just totally a different experience when you're watching them in person, and certainly when you're down close to ice level, and you see the success players like Spooner are having, who've got a tremendous size and speed and skill. And yeah, Fillier is pretty special. So not as much size, but she used to be a track sprinter. So she certainly got the speed and the skill. But it's awesome. It's been really fun to watch. I'm going again tomorrow when they play Montreal here in Toronto. So I think I've been to 5 games so far. So pretty lucky to do that. And it's really cool. I'm sure it's the same way in Ottawa, like just the number of girls in the stands and parents, and the atmosphere is like nothing I've seen before in the women's game. I mean, certainly at the Worlds and the Olympics, there's a certain fan base there, but the number of young players and young girls in the stands is pretty amazing. So, it's awesome. And I assume you got to spend some time with Carla as well?
Well, I sure did. Yeah, I went up with her parents and spent time with them, before and after games, and spoke with her at practices. It was pretty good, real good interaction. And a lot of I spent Sunday at Carla's home with her assistant coaches. They broke down video of their previous game the night before and talked a bit how they're preparing to go to Minnesota, which they got an overtime loss in. But it was really neat to be that close to the staffs and just get the inside feeling of players, where they were at, what they were doing well, what they weren't doing well. How do you get more out of them? It's the same problem everywhere. They've got players that they had higher expectations on that haven't really delivered. And so it's that perennial getting the most out of everybody game that they're playing. And Carla's one of the few coaches who doesn't shorten the bench until it's really awful. So she did pull the goalie Mashmeyer after she gave up 3 goals. And the backup that went in, who wasn't deemed to be good enough, played a good game, and she got to play in Minnesota, and they almost pulled it off, but didn't. And she's good enough to play. So when you have a 1B and a 1C goaltender, it's not easy to win games. But in that league, it's all about who's playing their best, and there's so many good players on all the teams because the 3 Czech players that Carla got, one of them got 2 goals, the other one got 1 goal in a 4-all tie. So she's pretty happy with her Czech players, but it was fun. Listen, Alan Andrews is on, and I spent some time talking to Alan yesterday. He's in Calgary, spending time with you. And for those that haven't met Alan, and Greg, I don't know if you're aware, but Alan runs, his son now is running Andrews Hockey Growth in PEI. And I always wanted to get Alan on because in his programs, and I think you're in the 45 years with that program, Al?
Yeah, it's our anniversary. It's our 45th anniversary.
Okay.
And we
And
didn't
I
mean
got to talk to Al a bit about how he got his program started. But with this group on, I wanted to talk about a couple of things. One thing, Kim, Alan, when I was involved, brought me in because he was paying attention to female hockey. And Al, could you just mention your first efforts at getting going in female hockey and where it's at right now and at your school?
Well, we started in the early 80s sometime to have female hockey camps, and the best we could get out would be about 15, and a lot of them were married women. Sometimes they'd be playing with men's teams and things. So we didn't have a really successful start. And then we got involved with Cassie and yourself, and we started promoting, and right now we have unbelievable programs. A lot of them have gone on to national teams, and one girl is Olympian from Switzerland. She came over every year to study in that, and we had Japanese girls over as well. They come over for a week or so, and it was during that tsunami or whatever it was, and we would have had probably 50, but they couldn't get leave because their companies wouldn't let them go. But we had I think about between 20 and 30 come over, and they were really, really excited about learning and learning. And anyways, hi to all you guys. Hi, Tommy. It's so nice to see you. And anyway, Wally videoed me yesterday, and I didn't know he was recording it. And I was laying down because I wasn't feeling that great. So I was laying down, and my half my face was on the pillow, and but he videoed and didn't tell me. But we'll get that straightened out. And so we have Atlantic. We started Atlantic Female Prospect Camp where we train numerous teams from all over Atlantic Canada. I mean, they go to the high level tournaments and they compete really well. I think they've won at the Meltdown in Montreal and all those places, and most of them get scholarships and go on. A lot of them play NCAA. A lot of you people know many of the girls that were there. Wonderful experience with them, and they always work hard and they can think a little better than we when they're on the ice. They're so easy to coach. And I remember one time I took a female Bantam team to New Hampshire, and I sent out the program, and it was like a team meeting, outside exercises, and going through the foundations of what they're going to play, and I got that from Wally. But anyway, we did all that, and there was really no time for anything. And so one of the mothers said, "Well, I saw your schedule," and we were kind of thinking of holiday and shopping. And, and I said, "Well, you help yourself." I said, "But the girls are staying with us." And so we'd go over everything in the classroom, and it's such an excellent experience to coach females. And anyway, I think we scored 36 goals and had maybe one or two scored against us, but we we won the tournament. And then I guess the lady that was going shopping had a little bit of both. She probably got her money's worth anyway. But some of these girls are wonderful, and I've learned so much from Tommy and Wally and you know, Karen Bredden, who stayed down there with us, because Cassie used to send people down, and she always made sure that they uh, they ended up asking us about lobsters. And I forget which girl it was, but she was an Olympian, and she was staying with us, and she said, Cassie said something about lobsters. And I said, how do you want to eat them? The way they do in the restaurants is the way we eat them. And she said, the way you guys eat them. So we piled a bunch on the table and had a bit of a feast. It was funny. Anyway, I've had great experience with girls, and our programs are with females are alive and well. And we have a lot of girls that are coaching and you know, you got playing every year. We get a bunch that go on to D1 hockey, and we've got girls in Stansted and many of the top prep schools all over North America. But
Al,
anyway,
I just want to mention that I remember when I came out there, I think Sonia might have been 16 years old. And I did run into an awful lot of players there. You had the prospect games where scouts come in and they evaluate players and get invites to prep schools and whatnot. But one of the things, Al, I wanted to get on here, and it applies to females and males, and I'm going to switch to one player that you work with since he was 5 or 6, because I'm curious. We talked earlier about players developing, players making it, players that get over the hump, that accomplish their dream goals. And I was curious, Al, when they're children, what are the qualities that you've noticed in those players? And the one I want to bring up, of course, is your most famous player, Sidney Crosby.
yeah.
What, how old was he when he started? Tell me about what you remember about him as a young boy beginning at your school. I'm sure he could skate when he come to your school, but if you wouldn't mind sharing your knowledge of the traits he seemed to have that
Well,
set him apart.
yeah, and McKinnon came for years as well, and so he got 4 points again yesterday. He's a 109 now. He's ahead. But anyway, Sidney came when he was about 5. He says 5 or 6, so I guess he didn't remember exactly what day, but he's very young. And he was always hungry to learn. He always did what he was asked to do. And he had come up through our system, and he used to come over for numerous weeks every summer. And he'd uh, he graduated to a demonstrator. And when they get their gold skate, they can become a demonstrator, and they sort of demonstrate and learn how to coach. And he came through that. Then he was a junior instructor, and so he left when he was about 14. It was the last time he was there, but he came back to train some, and we've been able
Al,
to.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but for those that are listening, Al's hockey school, he teaches fundamental skills. Nobody does that I know. And when he has a demonstrator, they can do the skating skill perfectly. And they wear these jerseys with demonstrator on their back, but they are able to demonstrate the fundamentals of mohawk pivots, forward stride, backward strides, tight turns, like details that are missing today in every level that I watch. Nobody skates technically as well as those demonstrators. And Al, I've always felt that watching them graduate to become a demonstrator, you have a skating program that did they go through it to reach a gold standard?
Yeah, it's a computerized program, and we had some help to develop that during the 80s. There was a dad that was really good at computing and wanted to know if he developed the program for us, whether his sons could come to hockey school. And I said, sure. So it was a trade-off. And you know, I had coached for years, and when I started the other program, we didn't mean to start. I was provincial youth coordinator with Department of Education, and so I had a pretty solid government job, and as you might say, so I just never meant to start a hockey school. I wanted to get kids together, maybe 30 kids for 3 years, and meet with researchers. And I met with Gaston Marcotte at Laval University, and he was one of the leading researchers in skating at the time. And I drove aboard my brother's old Honda Civic, and I drove to Laval and went in, and he wasn't overly welcoming. I think he just wanted to get through it, and I couldn't speak English, and he or French rather, and he didn't. Well, he spoke both, but I think he was more comfortable in French. But when he saw I was hungry, he got really excited because the teacher's always looking for the student, right? And he got up and started demonstrating in his office, and he gave me a whole lot of research that I had translated and on skating, and came down and spent time down in PEI, and it was a wonderful gift to have met him. And then I started doing following the research of Dr. Wayne Marino and a bunch of Larry Holt at Dow with Pierre Paget and all those guys, and started to learn proper techniques and what the research was saying, not just somebody's, doing figure skating moves and stuff like that. Although I worked with figure skaters one summer and learned what would apply to a great hockey skating program, and backward striding, forward striding, sharp turns. Although the position of the body is different, it's the bottom part of the body is the same in those skating skills. So anyway, so we got it started, and after a while, I was taking a couple of weeks off every summer, and the deputy minister of education in 1985 said, you know what? He said, I think you got to do one thing or the other. So I said, I guess I'll do the other, and so I put in my resignation, and I was actually job sharing. Somebody else came in and did my job for the summer, and the next spring the government was promoting that, and but I had already resigned, and so we had to go ahead and develop it or starve to death. Well, I guess I'm going in circles, Wally. So you better keep asking me questions.
Well, the question I've got here, it's more of why am I asking these questions and bringing these points out. Um, I mentioned earlier I'm watching AA, AAA practices, and they can do the drills. They play pretty good, but quite frankly, they can't skate fundamentally like you teach. And one example I have, and I bring it up with Tom's team, the backward skating, and if they can't stride, they really can't play the game. So there's a lot of skaters out there that wiggle, they don't stride, they don't develop power, they don't have posture, and they're doing the best they can, but they haven't been taught how to stride and mohawk pivot. In fact, they're giving up on it with surfing. My point, Al, and we're going to get back to Sydney and those other great ones, is when they became demonstrators and instructors, they could do everything that you need
Well,
to get on the ice at the NHL level.
I
They
learned a lot on backward striding with the figure skaters, and one of the guys I used to work with is Doug Shepard. He's got a picture of Sydney, sent it to him, and he said, "Anna, Doug, thanks for teaching me the forward C cut, forward C cut." And so it's C cuts, and when you're backward striding, one foot has to go straight, and the other one C cuts, and and it has to come right into the heel. Although you don't always use it in the actual game, it's better to do the whole thing. Like if you were boxing, you'd start with a straight right. You wouldn't start with a jab, but a jab is part of a straight right. And so in the game situation, you don't always use a full pump, but it's there if you need it. And so we have our skaters, they'll skate around the net, and they'll come to the blue line, they'll mohawk towards the boards, and then at full speed, and they can backward stride and they don't lose any speed. They can go just as fast backward striding. And then we go the other way to make sure they can mohawk, open mohawk. If forward to backward is a little different, but when they turn on the other blue line to go forward, they open up. And I see if you cross over, you're dead in the water. McDavid and those guys love the guys that cross over, because once they cross over, they're gone. You know, you're caught. So you don't cross over, but I see them all the time in the NHL. They're crossing over, and some of the superstars can skate a little bit and backwards, and then I see them going for the pucks, and they're not shoulder checking, and we teach that in novice, shoulder checking, and they know why, so that they can see where the pressure is and where their support is, and they learn all those things as novice, and they teach it. And kids, I think one of the things, Wally, that we've spoken about is that uh, people who coach have got to realize how brilliant kids are. And Wally has a great saying um, that you don't look to see how smart a kid is. You look to see how a kid is smart, and they all have different pluses and minuses, like all of us adults. And you treat the novices like people, like adults, and you involve them, and believe in them, and you got to be patient, because it takes a lot of repetition to get that. And Dr. John Maher, who was a mentor when I was at UNB, he says it's not how many new things you teach, it's how many things you remind them uh, about what they already know. It's like Tommy's wife trying to get him to take the garbage out. You got to keep reminding them. And but anyway, we're all like that, I guess. But it's delightful, like to work with young people. And I'm not able to coach now as much as I was, and I really miss it. And and the kids from all over the world come, and there's no difference. They're all the same. One little Chinese boy, I was working with his team, and we'd bring the kids in, and he'd tell me exactly what I was going to say. He was eight or nine. He'd tell me exactly what I was going to say before I said it. And the funny part of it was he was always right. And kids they're so brilliant. They can do things and we make our drills complicated, so they learn to think on the ice, and they learn to understand, and they learn to teach. Am I on there, Wally, or am I
Yep,
gone?
you are.
Okay. Uh, so anyway, you better ask me another question, because I tend to drift, Wally.
You're a pretty good drifter. Okay, listen. I'm glad Al came on because years ago, in my generation, and I'm sure everybody will appreciate this. The generation that Al grew up in and I grew up in of coach education, he dropped some names that none of you have ever heard of. Marcotte, Mahar. Back in that era, there was
Meeker?
the science of coaching, biomechanics, was part of coach education. And coaches learned to break down skills and build up skills. And we did a whole part whole methodology. So we're sort of geared in that. We're focused on that. And without that base, you can't play the game tactically as well as you should or could. So that base is something that average coaches don't teach anymore. And I don't know that there's that many specialists that can even teach it like Alan does at his schools out east. Um, and it's really, and I'm sure you know, my hair is getting grayer. I'm not losing it much, but when I watch it, I just see so many teams go 2 hard laps between drills. And the team I had last night, I talked to the coach who I was evaluating for development one, and I just reminded her, have them do some striding laps. Just sit tall, ride a horse, get that posture better, because they can't skate backwards. They can skate, but it's not as fundamentally sound as it could be, so they can play a more advanced game. And that's my point is we've got to master those fundamentals somehow. And the skill between drills idea, and that means striding backwards, forward striding and gliding with a good side push. These are fundamentals that, we just get into the drills, we get into the games, and we can teach skating. I would like to compliment one coach last night who has been doing exaggerated deep squat skating. And I watched his team practice yesterday. Their knees were ahead of their toes. They could skate. They had power in their strides. So kudos to him. He did a fundamental regression, a deliberate around the rink, almost a half squat, full squat, pushing to the side. Hey, yeah, it's not a waste of time. It's time that has to be spent. But today's coaches, we get caught up and compete in the games, and now playoffs are on. All we're worried about is winning those games. And I just don't know where in the season and at what age we're going to pay attention to those details. Because Sammy, when we got to the national team, we paid attention to those details. We had 27 hours, 1 hour sessions with a skating specialist, with our national team doing the same thing Al's doing at his camps. Kim, go ahead.
Sorry,
Your sound.
I'm on now. I'm a bit slow. But I think one thing that's interesting, right, is, and I'm coaching U9 like forever now for the next who knows how many years with my daughters. And, we work a lot on fundamentals. Obviously, they need it. But I think, maybe, and it's different because I'm coaching only girls and don't coach the boys. There's a tremendous value in things like tag, especially at the young ages, all the variations of it, to even just observe who has an outside edge, who can stop and start, who can't turn one way. And, to use things like that, I've watched a lot of development sessions at our own organization, other organizations, and I love line skating for the technical pieces. But I think if we're trying to engage a younger audience, we need to find different ways to embrace the chaos and embrace their mindset, because, as much as an efficient stride and the proper outside edge and all that control is important, the kids that are the best skaters at the young age, who are effective in a game situation, are the ones who can change direction, are the ones who can stop and start. And it's not actually at U9, the rate limiting step isn't who can go fastest in a straight line necessarily. It's who can, cut in and cut out and turn back to get herself in a straight line to then break away. And unfortunately, we're on full ice, so there's far too many full ice breakaways. But with my middle daughter, who's a pretty good little skater, much better than me, we used to do three drills on the little backyard rink, and it was really small, Wally. This was back when it was actually cold enough in Toronto to sustain an outdoor rink, so like 4 or 5 years ago. We did 3 drills. We would play tag. Her younger sister, her older brother, me and my husband, we'd play tag 10 minutes. You're it, we're it, freeze tag, whatever. Then we would play, I call it grenades. It's basically anything we had on the ice, balls, cones, pucks, we would shoot it at the kids' feet. So they had to know where we were and look over their shoulder and figure out where everybody else is and pick up their feet. So this is how I, taught them to be comfortable standing on one foot or the other. So I would strategically shoot it at their left foot or their right foot so that they would lift up the other foot, or else they just skate with one leg. And then we would play, and this one is actually the one that I think has gotten my daughter and then the players I coach the furthest, which I call thief in the night, which is you flip your stick over and you got the ringette ring, and you have to protect the ring from someone else lifting your stick, which even the 4 and 5 year olds can do. And that one for puck protection and body control has been really, really transformational for all our players. And so I think it's, to me, those are all skating drills. And, all often infused, maybe not in between drills, like you're saying, Wally, but certainly 5-minute breaks within our practices, or, 15 minutes at the beginning of our practices. If you just did those 3 drills again and again and again, all of a sudden you've got players, especially on half ice, who can really protect the puck, who can really change direction, who are really, really comfortable. And then I might argue, we then, as they transition to full ice, focus more on stride fundamentals and all of those details. Because of that, I'm just curious, maybe Alan's thoughts, or anyone on this call's thoughts, what our priorities are in terms of teaching when we're half ice. Because I haven't taught any stride. I've taught them how to skate backwards and how to forward stride, in basic terms, but I'm not teaching it in the way I was taught it, as like your sole mode of transportation to get down the ice. Because on half ice, you almost never get into full stride. So it doesn't actually translate into success in the same way. So I'm curious if maybe we should think about the curriculum a little differently, and maybe flip-flop priorities when the kids are more confined. And I'd be curious, and you guys might know, in countries like Sweden and Finland, when they play on even smaller ice for longer periods of time with the kids, are they focusing on different fundamentals, more edge work, less stride? I don't know the answers. I'm just testing it out with my own players. It seems to be working pretty well. So I'm just curious everyone's thoughts on that in terms of skating development with half ice games.
Well, Kim, that's exactly the issue, and I'm going to ask Al to comment, but before he does, small area games, they require more turns, more stops, more awareness. You do develop playing small area games.
I'm sorry, I wasn't on when you started. Is that Sammy Joe?
No, that's Kim.
Oh,
Kim
okay.
McCullough.
That was Kim McCullough
okay.
talking, but this is Sammy Joe also. Hi. But Kim's the really smart one. I just listen.
Anyway, I'm just saying.
Thanks, Sammy.
Everybody's gone to the game-like mode, the whole method, play the game, pick it up, and there's no doubt my favorite game is tag.
Yeah, it's those small area games are amazing, and it teaches balance. It teaches switching speeds and ducking and all kinds of things that apply to the game, and they're wonderful. And we interject those, in different times over the years, but those are wonderful. Anything that's innovative is good from my perspective. And Kim, you're really innovative, so you should be inventing new ones. You got the capability.
Well, it's interesting. So when we practice, U9 got 30 skaters on the ice at the same time, both our rep teams together. We have about eight coaches, although last night we had nobody. Felt like I was at hockey school by myself. It was a bit of an adventure, but 8 coaches, typically 30 to 34 skaters. And so, trying to keep them all engaged, they are competitive, but there's a huge difference between top and bottom, massive. And, how are we infusing edge work and fundamental skating skills where, the line skating or the cross ice skating or however you're going to do it, I find personally with that age group, I've got 15 minutes of that type of skating before it all goes, to seed. So we've actually started doing a lot of around the stick drills. So they put their sticks down on the ice together. So I don't know, those of you who have video, they're like this. So it's like a long stick. And then they do inside edges, outside edges, and then we play tag around these sticks. And I can get 30 minutes of that. They never get bored. And it's really easy logistically for those of you who are coaches and hockey school instructors. You don't need to get them in lines. There's no cones. There's no corralling of anybody, right? You can teach from the middle, and you don't even need to bring anything with you because it's their own sticks on the ice. But for the young kids, it's been really good. And then I started doing drills where there's chaos. They jump over the sticks. They turn around the sticks, of everybody's sticks. There's 34 sticks on the ice, and they're just using that to execute different skating skills around. So yeah, definitely being creative, but I'm just finding this is my second year coaching U9. The down ice skating, which I watch a lot of boys practices at that level, or that age group, sorry, and girls, and it's a lot of that linear down ice skating, and I just don't see the level of engagement from everybody that I do when it's a little bit more chaotic, obviously mixed in with a little bit more of that linear stuff. But I'm finding it's really translating well. So actually the first half of the year, it's all edge work and change of direction. In the second half, when we unfortunately get to full ice, I start teaching stride, but I don't teach it at the beginning of the year. So it flipped my brain, this half ice stuff, from how I normally would have taught it. Like if I had U11 or U13, I would have started with stride and then got to change of direction. But now with the little ones, I flipped it around. So still to be determined whether it's the right or the wrong way to do it, but it does mean they can all deke someone out one-on-one. They can all defend a one-on-one. They all have a lot more agility than players that have done just a little bit more up and down skating.
I'm just going to ask Greg Revak, chaos, and what Kim's talking about, because I know, Craig, that you're really into this kind of whole method of learning. Can you comment on that? What we've been talking about, Greg?
Yeah, I'm 100% with Kim on chaos is really good, especially at the younger ages, because there's a bit you can teach, but a lot of it doesn't get conceptualized and sunk really deep until they're able to think a little bit further. So probably like squirts, especially for the elite ones. I think it's U10, but squirt level. But I love the chaos. I think from how do we teach it, line is kind of the old way, and finding new ways to create, whether it be chaos. I love a good one called follow the leader. Just you can follow the leader all the way around, so the coach can provide a great demonstration, and the kids can follow around and just get them moving, particularly at those younger ages. And then just finding ways to put in chaos, and you can do constraints led approach where you get points for doing certain maneuvers rather than just going for straight up goals, and finding ways to encourage the movement pattern that you want. But I mean, there's still the tried and true, progressions. How do we get there? And finding ways to teach rather than just pure chaos all the time. But there's value to both sides, and it's how do we utilize those as coaches, and when's the right timing, and whether that be in a season, in an ice session, in an age group, etc.
Sammy, what are your thoughts? Being a goalie, now coaching and playing defense.
I mean, I love this conversation, and running a hockey school now for the 27th year. I feel like I am really reliant on, well, the Sharks, which has been amazing, but also on the younger instructors that are coming through and what they are learning in their different systems as well. So yeah, I love Kim's ideas especially for the younger age groups. It's really great, but there's also, something to be said as a mechanical engineer. And I think, Wally, every time you talk about biomechanics, I get super excited. I do like the fundamentals as well. And so, time and place for everything. And in a week-long hockey school, the beauty of it is you get to do it all, which is amazing, which I love. So that's my comments. Love listening to all you really smart people.
So the problem is, Sammy, we've done hockey schools, every one of us, and we've done the breakdowns. We've done the whole method. And I think expecting coaches to do what we do and adapt like we do, it's the most difficult and challenging thing for me. And I'm trying to get them, Kim and Craig mentioned the follow the leader. Well, I have a game where you follow the leader slowly in groups of 3, and you change who the leader is, and you increase the space or reduce it without a puck and then with a puck. I mean, they got to turn both ways. And can you teach turning? And yeah, you can, but boy, they'll get it sooner than later playing a game like that. And that's one thing that I've found watching U13. They cannot, 2 things. They cannot evasive tight turn with a puck. And they can't translate that into a breakout in a game. U13 AA hockey. They can't use the evasive tight turn in the offensive zone to gain time and space. And those that can don't look and see the ice to make plays. Now, the one or two kids that go on, they can do it. Not great. And I'm observing U15s and U18 players here. I don't see hockey IQ with the combination of tactical skills being used. So I'm caught up with how can we get all players to keep improving. And when I look at Al's players that have come out of his school and the two names that we've started this with, Sidney Crosby and Nathan McKinnon, fundamentally, they're probably the number 1 and 2 fundamental, have the best fundamental base of any of them. The only other player I would compare to them skating wise is Barzell. He's done some very special work on it. But that's my concern, and my role as a mentor this year was how to get them to evasive tight turn. And of course, the first thing I noticed is breakaway skating. Kim, you say whole ice hockey. Well, you got to be able to breakaway skate and whole ice hockey if you want to win games. And that means don't hold two hands on the stick and get the puck in your feet. That you can't accelerate. So those things can be taught in a fun way and a competitive way, but they do have to be taught and spend time on them. And I don't think it's a lot of time. It's just teach it, it gets done. They need to be reminded of it, like Al mentioned. One of his sports scientists said it's just a reminder of what you've done already. So, Al, do you have any comments to throw in? And then I want to just ask Jordan for a question or two. Al?
Well, Wally, we start all of our programs, like if we have an hour and a half in the ice, the first half hour goes to skating in every aspect, and the youngest, because if you can't skate, you can't build on it. You can't build anything else on your skill level. You know, it's hard to carry a puck and go in different directions if you don't know skating technique. And so that's if I had an hour and a half. What I normally do with the spring team, I'd have 2 hour and a half sessions, and we would have a first half hour skating each time, and sometimes 20 minutes, mostly half hour. And then we do get into our hockey foundations and drill levels and all that, those kinds of things. But we teach the kids to teach. And they teach on the ice, they teach in classroom, and a lot of it's personal development, because you can teach a lot of kids a lot of things, but if they don't know how to deal with people and meet people, and their communication skills have to be good. And our kids get up and teach after the first practice or so in the class. They get up and they'll go through everything, and they'll say new things that you've never heard people say before, because and they can team teach. And if you use a positive approach to that, every time they get up, they get applaud from their teammates, and then they'll start with teaching on the ice. And so we develop coaches. So in our hockey schools, they're all graduates. So it's easy to pass on skills when every level. And when I brought a peer education program from the Dallas School Board to the Maritime schools way back in mid 70s. And the person that did his thesis on that, the end result, there were strong indications that kids learn more from the peer education than they do the lecture technique. And so we've integrated that into our schools, where the demonstrators demonstrate and teach, because sometimes a child will see a pro out there and he's a pro, he can do it. But when they see somebody their own age do it, then they say, well, if he can do it, I can do it. It's just more believable to them. And so that's been a major success in our program, and all of those guys that come through our system. And I think we have 10 playing in the NHL now, and many, many more in minor pros in Europe and all over, and a lot of coaches. A lot of guys are coaching all over the place, and people like Ben Cameron, who's the physician for Team Canada now. I coached him for a long time, and he was tough, and we had to deal with him pretty strongly. But he's a wonderful guy and brilliant, and so we try to develop people that to be there and to develop a dream after the dream, so they can put all that together. So maybe it sounds complicated, but once the system is developed, it works well. You see a lot of kids going on to different professions and teaching and entrepreneurship and all those kinds of things, because all those things are part and parcel of how we teach young people.
Al, I'm going to, before I go to Kim, I'm going to come back to one word and you can tell the story later. How you've expanded the visual vocabulary for U10 players. And the one word is triangulation. And we'll get back to it. But Al does work with U10 age kids to get them thinking. I mean, peer teaching, questioning, he's been doing for years.
Yeah, these are actually Wally 7 and 8-year-olds.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what they can do and what they do.
Yeah. So Kim, go ahead, and then we'll try to get back to Al on his methodology. He's doing things with 7 and 8-year-olds that we should be doing with the kids we coach. Go ahead, Kim.
All right, I could listen to Al talk all day. So I'm writing notes down because I need more drills in my life. But no, it's interesting. We were talking about Wally, about how we help these coaches teach skill that can translate to team play, right? Because they all want to run the 1-3-1 power play with the bumper with 12-year-olds and spend half an hour practice on that. And what I've gone to, because I do a lot of like where I'm the skills coach for a team, so I don't teach their systems. I'm just teaching the concepts of hockey, and I'm finding that's been really, really successful at every age group and level, from U11 kind of mid-level rep players all the way to our top level players. So if as a coach you picked a theme for practice, like winning the walls, and you just taught players how to win the walls, and like whatever that means to you, in the offensive zone, in the defensive zone. If the defensive zone, it's the breakout. Maybe you're talking to the wingers. Maybe you're talking about the D's about retrievals. It's offensive zone, like you're saying, Wally. They can't make those tight turns, right? So a practice themed winning the walls has to have tight turns in it, has to have effective outside edges, has to have scanning and awareness of is there support? Where's the support? Where are the bad guys? Where are the good guys? So, things like getting the pucks back. How do you get a puck back? We don't have it. How do we get it back? Right? Like that's a different way of thinking of practice planning, as opposed to let's do 10 minutes on skating, 10 minutes on breakouts, 10 minutes on, attack zone, 10 minutes on power play, which, I used to run a lot of practices like that too. So I'm guilty as charged. But I find, especially with the girls, if you play that same string throughout, I've been teaching a lot of net drives recently because it's playoff time and all the goals are going to be ugly. And so, my last couple of weeks, I've just been working on how do I teach net drives from 9-year-olds all the way up to the 17 and 18-year-olds, and how do those drills need to change? What kind of decisions they have to make while they're driving the net. And then because we spend an hour, 90 minutes teaching a single thing, every coach almost is like, hey, in our next game, I saw 4 good net drives, as opposed to like we barely touched 6 different themes. And so they got incrementally better, but not in anything you could particularly see. So I think it's a different way. Like if you taught players how to break pressure, it's like, hey, how do you break pressure? Like it's just like what we're talking about with Alan, like how do you have a player think about that? How am I going to break pressure? Like my 7-year-old daughter would have an answer on how she might break away from pressure. What's she going to use? What kind of skills? What's she going to think about? So like I said, it's a different way of thinking of it. But if you want to try to get your players, especially at this time of year or like the second half of the season, can you get them thinking in a different way about how the game is played? Because it's all about breaking pressure, creating 2-on-1s, winning the walls, driving the net. Like those are the concepts they need to understand versus your 1-3-1 bumper of a power play. And I think that's the middle between skills and systems that coaches who aren't maybe as experienced as we are, that's the missing piece. They have to be able to teach the concepts of hockey and not as much focus on the system piece of it. So that's me on my my perch again preaching, but I think that's the difference, especially with the girls learning those in that way, plucking that same string for a whole practice or a whole series of practices has been really, really effective.
Now, listen, before I go back to Al, I just want to remind everybody, part of the strength of this group is that every one of you have thoughts in the back of your mind that relate to what we're talking about. And if you want to express that thought, just keep your hand up, put your little thumb up or finger up or whatever it is, and I'll get back to you to make that point. But my mind, when Al was talking about the intelligence of kids, and yesterday Al talked to me about he's teaching triangulation to 7 and 8-year-olds. And the visualization and the vocabulary of those words. Al, I'm going to turn that over to you because we do underestimate the capacity of the young people we work with.
I just want to deal with something with Kim said there. And Kim, every time I come on with you, I learn something. In fact, every time I come on with all of you, I learn a lot. And but what I do with sometimes with when we teach little breakouts to begin with, we'll send two kids in, two defensemen in from the blue line, and a puck is thrown into the corner or whatever, and they go back. Now, and then they know how to go back. They have to go back full speed and they have to shoulder check and that. So when they go back, if they don't do it, you blow the whistle and you say, what happened there? Oh, one of them will say, I didn't go full speed. And I said, well, why do you go full speed? Because you want to see where you want to create time and space. And what's that mean? It means you get more time to make a play and more room to do it. And they know the answer. And then they go in again, and all of a sudden I blow the whistle again. And I said, what happened there? Oh, I didn't shoulder check. And why do you shoulder check? I shoulder check to see where my support is and where the pressure is. And what's that mean? Support means my own teammate who I can pass to, and the pressure is the other team coming at us. And we involve the goalie and all that stuff as well. We don't stay at it too long at a time, but when we're in the classroom, then we go over that again, and they teach it, and they understand why they do something, and it becomes a habit, and they're going to develop habits one way or the other, and it can be good or bad. And it's hard to break a 13-year-old when they don't know how to do an open mohawk turn because it's in their brain now, and so it has to be taught young. And so the other question, Wally, was that you might, oh yeah, so I give them big words, and I'll give them a big word like triangulation, and what's that mean? Well, I said, go home and Google it, and or ask your parents or whatever, and come back. And so all of a sudden, the next day they come back, and it's triangle, coach, it's triangle. And what's a triangle mean in hockey? And then we might show them do a triangulation drill, and they understand then how it fits into the game, because you know, people say, well, you teach that when it's, you know, they're 13 or 14, you teach skating and stuff. Wonder why can't you teach them all together? Because they're brilliant and they remember things. I mean, I got a 2.5-year-old grandson, and he knows his way around my iPhone, and so they're brilliant, and they can. And so you can teach the whole person, and then you're teaching communication skills in the classroom. You're teaching, you know, who's the most important person on the ice. Well, they say it's your teammate. They understand it young, and it develops understanding and respect for their teammates, and all those things are taught right through, because you can get the best hockey player in the world and they end up in jail. You're not gonna be very productive for them. And so you teach good things, and I don't if they're up doing something at a board at the classroom, if they're up explaining a drill, I would never say, well, that's wrong. I'd say, well, that's certainly one way of doing it. And or if they're missing a component, does anybody want to help them? And somebody will come up and help them, and they all of a sudden they're learning to they're learning to communicate within a group and feel good about it. And we usually have these seminars on the first of the week on Sunday. We don't now as well because of time, but uh, I asked a 9-year-old to get up and speak to the group of parents and kids, and no problem. He got up and spoke for 10 minutes, and what he said was pretty sensible. I didn't warn him I was going to ask him. I just asked him to get up, and he did. He had no fear, and if they can get over that young, it means so much to them educationally as well. And I say things like another big word would be think and sync. What's that mean? Well, they probably don't know, and so I said, well, what does think you think is short for? And they have to go home and figure it out and come back and tell me, well, it's synchronization. And it's like swimmers, synchronized swimming. They all do it together. And so we have to think as a team. And they can understand that at 7, 8, 9 years old. And so that's the approach I've used. But I was a elementary teacher, school phys ed teacher for 4 or 5 years in Charlottetown years ago, and I got to know, I got to understand that age group really well. And all we had was round balls and a hoop and a skipping rope, and so we had to be innovative. But we had fun, and if they have fun, and sometimes you got to realize that they have a certain time with attention span, you got to move on. And I guess I'm rambling, but I hope that answers the question.
But it leads to more questions. Al, I don't know, but all I can think of is Sidney Crosby when you're talking.
Well, Sidney always came to work, and he was respectful, and he stayed over there. We were at Slemon Park at the time, and he stayed over, and he'd stay over, and he'd go through the whole day. If he was taken to school, and then when he's demonstrating, he's now working, so he's on payroll of some sort, and so he'd go home at supper time and go to bed. And I didn't know because I wasn't living on close by. But at 10 o'clock, the staff would go on to play hockey, and Sydney would go out with them. And Cassie Campbell was involved in that. And anyway, he'd get on the ice and play with them. But he always wanted to learn. He wanted to learn. He wanted to work hard, and he was really easy to work with. He came down one time and stayed with Josh, my son, on the weekend, and they went picking strawberries, and he never picked strawberries before, and and they could they don't mind if you eat one or two or three or four because they can't pick them all anyway. So I said, you can eat those. He said, he said, no, I want to eat them. So he picked and picked. And he was one of the best pickers in the field. And then he come home and for supper, I think we had spaghetti, and he had about three bowlfuls of strawberries. But he's sort of organized, and he thought different than most people. And he was funny. Like he enjoyed people, and there was a lot of people. And like Brad Richards was there, working and training, and Drew McIntyre, and a lot of those. Clark McLean, Doug's son, was probably there at the same time. And so anyway, that's how he was, and he never forgot. Like he actually framed his demonstrator sweater and sent it to me a couple of years ago, and it's a beautiful sweater, and he had it autographed and everything, and he never forgets. And when kids come through our system, we don't bother them. We let them go and do their thing, and we never ask them for anything. But he sent me a lot of things to his parents because his sister came to take up goaltending as well when she was 10, and I used to see the parents a lot. And he dropped in. He's dropped in occasionally.
Now I got a question for the everyone else that's on has had children. I've had a grandchild, and Tom, I think that when you have children, Sammy, and he's talking about the intelligence of young people. Think of your own kids, whether it's sport, and whether we've parented or coached them. to their capacity? Are we ready to coach, like Al says, to use the Socrates method, so to speak? Sammy, what do you think? Because I'm sure the wheels are turning in that wonderful brain of yours.
Well, I think kids teach you exactly as an adult what you probably need to learn at a certain time in your life. I think the hardest thing for us, for my husband Billy, um, and I, who are such passionate hockey players, is that it's not her passion, and she has other passions, and allowing her to flourish in who she is as a person. Um, so at times that's a struggle because you want to impart all of your knowledge and all of your expertise into this young person, but they become their own person, and so you know that is sometimes I think a struggle, and I think that's the hardest thing for me is that to not necessarily have a shared passion like that, but to try to pick up her passions. And my parents were not hockey people, and so it's made me realize how grateful I am to them for allowing me to pursue my passions and not pushing me into certain areas. So yeah, we took her to the Leafs game last night, and she was up dancing and just so excited about all the dancing that was going on. And she drew a picture of her new friend Jordan that she met at the game. And I mean, all the other aspects that go into sport. So we just want to keep her healthy and active. And she's super into rock climbing and other things now that non-competitive. And she always asks me, Mommy, why do you want to win all the time? And I say, well, I think there's something wrong with me. I don't know. There's something wrong with me. But yeah, I'll let others talk because it is certainly a journey, and one that is new every single day for sure.
Well, Sammy, that might not last forever.
It might not, or it might. People tell me all the time.
My granddaughter was the same. She just did individual stuff. She did martial arts and track and all this kind of stuff. And then got into grade 10, all of a sudden she started playing rugby, and she loved being on a team, and now she's playing at St. F.X. And
yeah, my daughter loves being around other kids and loves sort of the team aspect of it, loves the before and loves the after. I told her when she wasn't playing this year that Mommy and her still get to go skating once a week, so she enjoys that. And she just as much loves in her skates climbing the snowbanks at the side and making up her own game that's going on. And so yeah, who knows? But you're right, Tom. It might not last, but it might last. And some people say to me, "Oh, my daughter didn't like it till she was 12, or my daughter didn't like it till such and such age." And so trying not to force it, and just so now I dabble in all my friends' practices, and I do about once a week with various different kids' teams, helping the goalies and injecting some fun into their practice, doing dancing island and fun things like that. So it's almost like being a grandparent because you get to do all the fun things and then you give them back to the real coaches.
Yeah. My God, Cassie comes out regular. We coached together last year, and then her daughter's an affiliate, so she comes out quite regular. And last week she was at practice, and she's really good on the ice and really good with the girls, which is a real bonus to us.
Yeah, she's a lot of fun.
Well, Sammy, I'm still waiting for you to come out to mine, but it's a long haul to get out.
Tell me when. I'm ready.
Oh my God! So
yeah.
I have two daughters playing, as everyone knows. One just turned 6 today; it's her birthday, and a 7-year-old. And the 7-year-old is exactly me with edges. So she's much better skater than me, but like everything, Sammy, is identical. She's so competitive. So just a snippet. Last night we do 5-puck, the breakaway one the goalies love/hate, where you have to score the 5 pucks before the kids at the other end score, which is hilarious with U9s because like they deke, like when they're right on top of the goalie, they shoot it into the corner. It's great. I think it's more fun for us coaches than the players. But we had 8 players on one color and only 6 on the other color. So my daughter was on the team with 8, so I traded her to make it 7 and 7. That's fast math for you there, Sammy. And so I trade her, and they play 3 rounds, and the team I trade her to loses every time. Like close, last puck. She's the last shooter 2 of those times. she is crying after practice, like, Mommy, why did you trade me? The team that you traded me to lost every single time. And I was like, well, you should have shot more. Maybe you should have hit the net. And I was like, this is my kid for sure, 100%. I don't care that she's crying. She like is so competitive. Everyone else on her team's like, yay, like practice is done. She's like, like can't stand it. So I don't know where she'll end up, but I do think, you know, going to the PWHL games, like we went to the 6 games and all of that, she now watches and asks me, like, can I do that one day? Do you think I could do that one day? And I'm like, please watch Jocelyn Larocque and Renata Fast as much as humanly possible. Like, those are the players. Watch them. Don't watch anyone else. She's a D so far, so we'll see. But my youngest, Sammy, who just turned 6 today, playing U9 House League. So she's playing with girls older than my daughter, right? So they just combine the House League to the whole age group. They're in a tournament last weekend, which I have many thoughts about, not many of which were positive, but they had fun. And they got to the 4th game. So they won the 3rd game by some like miracle, like gloves in the air, ridiculous. My daughter was playing out, but she desperately wanted to play goalie. She's 5 years old, right? So there's 9-year-olds on the team. She really wants to play. They win in the morning. She really wants to play. And so we let her play. But they had won in the morning with like a 9-year-old in net, and like who actually made sense. She goes in there and we're playing a House League team with like rep jerseys and their names on the back, like a kid who can raise it on her backhand. Amazing. Don't know the score because they run time after 5, which I don't really agree with in House League tournament, but maybe just stop showing the score, but don't run the time. We got pumped like for sure 20-0, Sammy. For sure 20-0. Like it was running time after 4 minutes into the first. I've never seen running time so quickly in my life. And my daughter loved it. I'm like, oh, she might be a goalie. She loved it. She was so excited. She's like, how did I do, Mommy? I was like, yeah. She made some saves, mostly like of the variety where you just like lie down on the ice and stick your legs out. And then she was like sticking her stick in the air to like cover more.
That's how
I was like, oh, I might have a goalie.
I love it.
It's such a treat. But, you know, coaching your own kids, of course, is an adventure. And I don't know where they'll end up with it. But for me, you know, the presence of, you know, people like Sammy, you know, coming out to your practice. I mean, like, can you imagine? Right. And then being able to watch these women play. And, you know, we went and watched York University play the other day, and I've got 4 former players on these teams. Like, I just feel so fortunate to be where I am and have these female role models for my daughters and my son as well, who comes to the games, pretends he has no idea what's happening, and then is like, oh, that was a nice forecheck. He's never played hockey. I'm like, how do you know that? But it, you know, to me, being able to see these strong, powerful women and just have my whole family there, you know, all 3 of my kids there, I mean, that to me is the value in what they're doing in sport. And if they decide they want to do whatever, like they can tag me in and we can start training for it. But yeah, Sammy, you might have to send my youngest out to you. She's an interesting bird. She might just be a goalie.
Listen, I want to just stay on this a little bit longer about the idea of your kids and what they're going to do and what they're going to choose. I really appreciate the point you made, Sammy. And I'm curious, Greg, you have kids, and I don't know whether they play hockey or they're old enough or they're too young yet, but all of us are too young.
8 months.
You're going to be scratching your head if they aren't interested in hockey. All of mine have played ice sports, ringette, with all my girls growing up, but all played different sports. And the idea of them choosing to do in their lives what they want to do is really important. And I think there's some parents out there that force them to do something they don't necessarily want to do. And they're trying to please their parents. And I can't imagine the strain that must be on the relationship when you're just doing something like that. And I don't know, Sammy, if you can add something to that and whether you've encountered it or not, or how do you handle it when you see it happening?
You're right, Wally. It's tough. I mean, it's my daughter played for 3 years, and her first 2 years, she had Jennifer Bottrell and Adrian Lamonaco, her husband, coaching. I mean, these are two of the best coaches in the entire world. And then her final year, we moved her over to just all girls, and thought maybe that was kind of the issue. And so my husband, Billy Bridges, who's a sledge hockey player, and I coached, and we were on the ice, and we are all about fun and all about making it exciting for all the other, for everyone. And we were certainly not hard on her or anything, but it is really hard to see them when they don't love it. And, she told us so many times over those 3 years, but we thought, I think like so many parents, oh, eventually they'll like it if they just can learn to skate. And then she learns to skate, and it's not her thing. So when she came to us in the summer and she said, Mommy, I really don't want to play hockey. I said back to her, I think not rightly, but I said, Mommy really loves coaching, and I love the U9 level, and that's just, my bread and butter. And I said, will you just play one more year of house league? Because Mommy really loves it. And she turned to me and she said, for you, Mommy, I'll play. And I thought exactly the wrong reason. It really stopped me dead in my tracks and made me realize, like, she is simply playing for me. And so when she does rock climbing, or she does gymnastics, she does karate, her face lights up and she gets excited to go, and she puts on her own equipment and her own stuff. And that just wasn't the case in hockey. And I truly do think that hockey took Mom and Dad away a lot in her childhood. And so it doesn't necessarily have the best connotations. So who knows, maybe she'll come back to it at some point. But there is such a joy when you see your child do something they love. And so I really encourage all parents that, maybe are struggling with it, that it is okay that they step away from the game. And if they're telling you, I think it's important that when kids make a commitment, that they see it right through to the end, and that you don't take them out halfway unless there's huge issues. But they commit to it at the end, and then they replace it with something else that is fit and active, because I think it's really important for kids to be fit and active, and to be busy and learn all the important skills that sport can teach us. But it will certainly take us in different journeys in different directions. And with only one too, we only have an only child, and sometimes all eyes are on her as well. So it's different when you have a harem like Kim has, where they're all running around free and wild, and get to kind of choose the things they want. But with one, you're always asking those questions, and I think listening is so important. So that's my recommendation, is to, allow them the chance to do everything, but listen when they are telling you what they want to pursue.
Wise words, Sammy. Thank you. I'm now going to see, hopefully Jordan is still on. Jordan is at his new high school that hasn't opened yet. And having principaled elementary school and returning to high school, which he has administrated before, I think, Jordan, you've been listening to a lot of this. Hopefully you're still on. I'm just wondering if you have any questions, thoughts to add. And I know you wanted to be on for sure if Alan was joining us. So Jordan, anything that you can add to the conversation? Go ahead, Jordan.
Hi, Wally. Yeah, I don't know if there's a whole bunch I can add to the conversation. I'm taking a lot from the conversation. I started out this morning at a football field rather than a hockey rink, looking at that great facility that you have in Calgary, Wally, at Shouldice, now under the dome piece. And I'm currently working, trying to plan for a new high school to open in September, and it's going to be an interesting undertaking. And having just left the largest elementary school in Alberta with over 900 kids, K-6, I've seen the whole gamut in my career and working on it. And unfortunately, I've never had my own humans that have gone home with me as children, but I've been blessed with working with thousands of other people's kids. And much like Sammy talked about those practices about riling kids up and then sending them home to their coaches or their parents, that's always seems to be what my role has been is exciting kids about what they're doing at school and hopefully having it spill over when they get home, and that piece, that love for learning. So when you're talking about that piece, I really applaud you as parents, those of you that have talked about that, allowing children to find their own path, because we see it even as coaches this year, coaching U18 AA female again in Calgary, and girls hockey, and it's awesome experience. But even at that level, you'll still end up with the odd kid that you really question whether the motivation of being there is theirs or whether it's there for their parents. It's one of those pieces that when push comes to shove, you really hope that they're there for themselves. And those players that are there for themselves usually push it a little further than others. So it's yeah, that's my thoughts on that piece, Wally. On the fundamentals and all of those different things, it's all been a trial and error piece for me. I can go back to when I first started coaching U15 AAA hockey on the girls' side, and I remember working with the group, and because as you alluded to, we've all done hockey school stuff, and I was doing some power skating edge work stuff with these kids in isolation, because I was recognizing some edge things, and one of the critiques I got from one of the parents is, "What are you doing all that stuff for? This isn't Timbits hockey." I wanted to say, because when your daughter goes back to retrieve a puck, she'll only turn to her right. But it didn't. I didn't, and but we kept working on it and that sort. So it is looking to incorporating it into fun games and things like that. But and I know Kim talks about hopping on a soapbox. My soapbox to it is this, that it seems like in all youth sport right now that we seem to be finding ways in which to replicate what previous generations would have gotten from a shinny pond. So we do small area games, we do things, constraints, and some of those sorts of things that would have just been natural happening on a shinny pond. Well, shinny pond is all ages. So what's the natural constraint of you having to be stronger on your stick when there's kids that are 3 and 4 years older than you? That's you got to be quicker. You got to be able to get away from them and some of those sorts of things. So it's all of those pieces, but we continue to work on it. And as you know, Wally, it's been a work in progress, and it's great having people and minds like on this call come together, because it only betters the game when we can think about it collectively and try and do things that will improve things. And then the last piece I'll add here, I know long story longer and story of my life, don't ever give me the opportunity to speak, is that I really appreciate Alan sharing the piece about working on the human side of things, and helping them to be better humans away from the game as much as a part of the game, in that whole teaching the big pieces of being good public speakers, being good leaders, and all of those sorts of things. And I had the opportunity this past May of being in Charlottetown and getting to see Alan's facility, and it's an amazing place. And the whole island experience was an amazing piece for me. But I really grew to appreciate what Alan's doing out there and what he's been doing for decades. And so I think that the players and people out there have been benefactors of that piece. And I think each of us plays a role in championing that in every little place where we are in hockey, and how we can influence it. And I had a coach that his only ask of us as players were that when we got to the age where we could have the time to give back to the game, and if we felt that we got anything from the game, that he felt that was our duty to do it. So I'm trying to pass that on to my players too, that if we get anything from this game, let's make sure that we're trying to make it better, and that we give back to it when we have time. So
it's so great. It's great to be on the program with you, Jordan. The world needs more people, educators like yourself, and it's so nice to be part of this.
Sorry I had to leave. Nature called. I just wanted to ask Peter Whitney. Hopefully you're still on, Peter. Peter, are you there? I just slipped out. Sorry I missed the last part of your conversations, Jordan, on you're preparing for the playoffs, and I'm looking forward to seeing your teams compete moving forward. It's really exciting. So, Al, obviously, people knew you were coming on. I shared that with the majority of the Sharks yesterday that you'd be on today, and I'd just like to get back to something that when I've come out to your hockey schools, I've spoken to the parents, and you have, oh gosh, I don't know how many people fit into the auditorium, and Josh and Brad and yourself has spoken to the parents, giving them an overview. But I'd like you to talk about the books that you give out and the reading that you inspire at that session. That was very impressive for me.
Well, we have a reading program, and it's not compulsory, but we start a lot of kids reading. And one of the great books that we've read over the years is Dr. John Maxwell's "Talent is Never Enough," and those kids have taken, would be responsible to come back and give a summation of what they learned. And it was amazing. Some of it was word for word what Dr. Maxwell said about a certain aspect of life and sports. And others were their own innovative and what they picked up from reading that chapter. And I've spoken at business seminars and used their quotes, and people couldn't believe that a 10-year-old could do that. They could come out with that. But as they read, they become very proficient at the English language as well. So there's a lot of merit in reading. So we have a number of books that we provide for them. And if I get somebody that'll read, I give them the offer. You read that book and send me a one-page report, and you can keep the book, and I'll give you another one. And so I'm always looking for the one that's asking for the next book, and so it's important. I know it's important to me to read, and I don't read enough, but it's really, really important for young people to read, and they think at a different level when they read, and they all of a sudden they realize they're not alone in the world. There's other people there with them, and there's just a lot of benefits from it. And it's I've got copies of some of the things that the kids have said in their summations, and then we encourage them to do something good in the community, like visit a senior citizen. And I should send out Wally to one boy, little Irish fella, he used to go down and work with this couple that weren't to take their wood in, and he always liked to go down, but they always had stew and biscuits for him. And he said they wanted to pay me, but I'd never take money from doing something like that. And it's very it touches your heart to see kids going out and do great things, especially with their teammates or with people that are not as fortunate as they are, and people that are in facilities and that. So we try to encourage that as well, because it gives them an overview. And Tommy, I think that you're one person that I've learned so much from. And every time I see you online and that, it's pretty amazing all the great things that you do and have done for so many years. And I love the times that we drove around together and you told me some hockey stories. But anyway, it's well, I don't want to hog this, and I really appreciate seeing you guys, and I love Wally. I don't know if Wally ever told you, but when Wally met me, his wife said, so you finally met somebody as crazy as you. And so Wally and I have done some great things, and he mentioned Jill Saunier, and she sent a nice, she sent me an autographed sweater when she played her Olympic game, and and there's a picture of her and I and Wally when she was a young girl, and she always put so much, she always was so thankful that Wally was there in her corner, and as she developed. But anyway, Wally, I'm just gonna probably sign off and thank you, everybody, and Sammy Joe, so good to see you, and and I think it was you I got the lobsters for, I'm not sure.
It could have been.
Good
We
seeing ya.
were
Pardon?
we were in PEI, and my husband Billy. I remember coming through before I even met my husband Billy. But now
Yeah.
we're in PEI a lot with him being an Islander.
Well, he's a very special Islander, all of us,
I
and
think
so you
I
guys
I
are,
think so.
all you guys, say hi to him, will you?
I will for sure, and say hi to your family as well.
Okay, bye-bye.
Al, I'll get a hold of you tomorrow. I'm going to carry on with a few of the Sharks I have questions for, but I'll come over tomorrow and we'll record you at the whiteboard and pass it on to all the others about how you teach novices to play the game and do the X's and O's. And it'll be something to share with the hockey audience that they'll appreciate. Thanks very much, Al.
Okay, I got some stuff for coffee, Wally. The girls picked it up yesterday, so we'll be good to you. Thanks.
Okay, take
Good
care.
seeing you, Al.
Bye-bye.
Okay, I'm just gonna refer to Greg here. Greg, I'm really curious about what you thought about it. We went all over the place here, and I'm just wondering what you might add to what we've said or done and bring us back to the game today.
Wow, we took it to many places. You know, how do we teach skating? How do we? I like the book club idea though. Trying to figure that out. I've got a high school group, so how do I help them over the summer without having them in the rink too much? You know, playing other sports, being kids, etc. So I'm going to steal that. I think got a great book called Clear Thinking from a good Canadian, Shane Parrish, that I really liked. So we'll do that. Yeah, I don't know. Is there anything specific you guys want to touch on today?
Well, I'm curious, the Clear Thinking book. Can you paraphrase a little bit of it?
So there's this blog / newsletter called Farnham Street, and it's all about how do we think better, clearer. So the book's called Clear Thinking: Turning Ordinary Moments into Extraordinary Results. So it's about like emotional control. How do you look at mental models to help your thinking? All of this. So it's for me, it's kind of like this best hits of how do we think better, how do we think well, and everything that goes into that, whether it be emotional control or how do we view the world or situations.
Well, I've got a question that maybe anybody can add to. It's when I thought of the book Clear Thinking, and I'm thinking of hockey IQ. I'm thinking of awareness, self-awareness in particular, and how unaware players are of what is going on around them, and how they can become much more aware and become much smarter in making decisions as they play. Does that book connect with this at all?
Yeah. I mean, awareness is pretty much everything, right? Like that's the stages of growing up, is become more and more aware of items and situations and the nuances. You go from seeing black and white to seeing the gray and being able to parse out how to think and react and respond to all those situations. So for me, I mean, that's kind of a big part of learning and growing, and whether it be hockey IQ or just creating taxpayers, productive taxpayers, it all ropes into one, which is why I love that idea of doing almost like a book club for your hockey team. But that was a great element that Alan added.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the thing I'm trying to get into, is just how do I make my kids more aware? Because a lot of them, the joke is like space cadet. They're here with us physically, but maybe not sure so much mentally. Or like everyone talks about today, you've got pretty much every kid seems to be, or it's probably not every kid, but about somewhere between 40 to 60% are on some kind of medication for something like ADHD. So how do we help them handle that, and and a lot of it's maturity, just becoming more aware and being more present and finding ways to get that is what I'm currently working through.
I'm curious about Jordan's thoughts as an educator and a coach about the EDH factor. I encountered it many years ago running a hockey school, and quite frankly, I really couldn't handle the young player who had it. And being a teacher, I thought that we could, because we were teachers. Jordan, have you had any experience with that side of it, and any advice?
Well, yeah, Wally, there's it seems to be more and more. The two things that we're faced with are those that maybe have ADHD or that sort of nature, but the other piece is the anxiety piece, which is something totally different that you have to deal with players too, and it's back to the mental side that Greg may be working on with players as well. But on the ADHD side of things, the biggest thing is it's kind of interesting, Alan talking about the demonstrators that he had at his hockey school, and that them being of the age of the others. And so what you'll find with it is that you have to chunk it into smaller pieces, and keep the activity up, because of course that helps them focus, and that piece. So it's really important that you're chunking it into smaller bits and lots of activity. You can also have them as demonstrators, and recognizing then that puts some focus into it too. But it's just challenging. It's meeting kids where they are. I would probably say that I was undiagnosed with ADHD when I was a kid, but I could focus for longer periods of time when it came to things that I was really interested in, like hockey, and that piece. But the other thing is that the brain research out there right now in education is that we are shrinking attention spans, and part of it is the digital devices that are prevalent everywhere, and that we can be scrolling through thousands of different feeds in seconds. And it's kind of like when you're talking about using video with players, that kids will sit and watch highlights, but they wouldn't want to sit and watch an entire shift. So it's or a whole group of clips together, of longer clips that you're trying to turn into educational opportunities. So it's all of those sorts of things. You just have to be aware of it and meet the kids where they are is the biggest thing, and try and figure it out. One of the pieces that I'm working on with my AAA role that I'll be doing next year, Wally, as I shared with you, is we're looking at player development partnerships with the parents and the player, where you sit down and have a meeting and look at it and set it up. What are we wanting to do? How are we going to achieve this, and put a timeline on it? And it's kind of like individual improvement plans for students, that you're treating each player as an individual, the same as you would with each student. And so meet them where they are.
Jordan, I just thought of this. I've got a copy of this sheet that you put together. Have you thought about it in education?
Well, it is, Wally. I'm that one's not ready to share quite yet. I haven't put any finishing touches on it quite yet, Wally. But it's actually reverse engineered from what we do in education, in that if you look at an individual improvement plan for individual IPP for a student, or student learning plan, SLP, whatever the jurisdiction's calling them. It's based on setting goals together, communicating with families, teachers, and everyone, coming up with strategies for the goals, and then putting a time frame on it. And so that's really very similar to what I would like to do with players going into next season.
How important are the parents in that, in education and in sport?
They're becoming more and more integral, Wally, in that in my day as a player, my parents showed up to the rink. That was, well, my mom showed up to the rink. My dad did when he wasn't working, but it wasn't. It was different. Parents didn't drop everything to be at the rink, and parents seemed to have some of their own things going on in their own worlds. Whereas now it's their total investitude in their child. So you need to partner with them because they are going to be a part of it, whether you want them to be or not, as a coach or as a teacher. But then the other side of it is that we need to get past the point where we're looking at it as being an adversarial relationship, and the communication needs to increase. Like as an administrator in a school, even if I'm having struggles with a child in our school behaviorally, my conversation with the parent isn't accusatory of that they're crappy parents at home or their crappy parenting is the reason why this kid is the way they are. My question is always the opposite way of, okay, what do you do at home if this arises? And if it doesn't, what are some of the strategies you use with your child to make sure that this type of thing doesn't arise? We need to work with you together. And so it's that piece. Are there some times where you do get to the point where you're like, yeah, that kid isn't really being supported at home the way that we'd like? Well, then we will be supporting them differently at school to step it up to support them and that piece. But it's more important now than ever to include parents, and both with in sport as well, because okay, we used to think that our sport was one that was inclusive of everyone and easily accessible by everyone. Well, it's not the point, or it's not the case anymore, especially at the elite levels when you're talking that U18 AAA players their parents are paying $20,000 a year. So ish, somewhere around there. It's ballpark, but it's one of those pieces, and you're going, so it isn't accessible to everyone. And when parents are putting that type of an investment in on a season's worth of hockey, you need to include them, because basically they are the investors in your program. Literally, they're investing in your program monetarily. So you have to communicate with them, and that will include right down to a development plan in my mind.
I'm curious, and Tom, being in the same association, working with coaches and working with parents, what can we do as coaches, as mentors, and to improve the relationship between coaches and parents and players, to create that sense of trust and respect? Because we all want the same thing. We want the best for the child. And I think egos play a part in everything that we do, but they may be the limiting factor in trying to make the experience positive.
Well, at the start of the year, everything was hunky-dory. We were beating everybody badly, and we didn't go to shortening the bench and having specialty teams till later on. So we kind of lost some of the parents there. We were losing a whole bunch of one-goal games, because we weren't scoring on the power play like we would, or all this kind of stuff. And there's a little bump in the road there. So what I did is I got all the parents in the room after a practice, and I went over everything we did, all the team play, all the kind of things we were doing and what our, plan was, because that was when we were changing. We changed over and we won 70% of the games after we started having power play and penalty killers and all this kind of stuff. But it really helped that I showed them our forecheck. I showed them our power play. I showed them, everything we did. And a lot of them thanked me after because they really didn't understand all we were doing. And that got the parents back on board. And 2 nights ago, we had a parent, you were there, and 8 of the parents played in the game. And, there's going to be a team party next week, on that bloody playoff. I mean, we get 49 shots and score 1 goal. We couldn't have played much better. And, unfortunately, having a couple of goals called back that shouldn't have been called back. So we lose 2 games, 2-1. But as far as the parents last night or the night before, I guess it was the night before, they were all coming up and thanking us and saying they're really happy. And they all said, no way we should have gotten beat there, but you don't always win when you should. So it went from having them on our side to kind of losing a lot of them because of the win-loss thing, and then back on our side again. And it was just communication.
It was up and down, that's for sure.
I was really up. It got down there, but it was more to do with that manager. It was, it was about 4 parents that did all that. And then, because I had a lot of people come after, and they said they were really embarrassed by that happening.
Yeah.
And they didn't agree with any of it. And then, we got them all back on board. And, so you asked me, well, what would you change? Well, I wouldn't change anything because you do have ups and downs in the season. You do have, it's how you deal with them. It's not going to go all hunky-dory. Not everybody's going to agree with what you do. And as far as backward skating, I got gassed on and we did the backward. And we did every second practice, we did striding, and we did that game where we started off with the player with the puck, at the bottom of the circle. And it was too far. We got it so that the player was starting at the dot and they weren't beating our D.
Yeah.
So we worked on all those things all year. So things don't just, because you work on them once, they don't just appear and all of a sudden everybody can backward skate. But we did get the point that nobody crosses over backward skating anymore.
Yeah. You never got beat on any rushes.
No, we didn't. And we did early in the year all the time.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Past girls in there would just burn our D wide all the time. And even Lethbridge had one girl that burnt a couple of girls, because they had some good players. And, they all came on, but it's a process, and they're only 13, 14-year-old kids.
Yeah.
As far as the process went, I thought we were going to win the league. I mean, we beat the top teams 2 weeks before.
Yeah.
And we played them. And, just some bad luck around that, and no puck luck.
Tom,
bad balls.
I got I don't know, this is a suggestion. Would it be helpful to do that meeting with parents before the Christmas break when you still have games left and letting them know what you're working on?
Called a meeting. And my manager said, everybody's too busy. And that's what I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And everybody's too busy and all that, and let's do it after.
Yeah.
And that's when I wanted to do the meeting. That would have been because we had a meeting at the start of the year, of course. And, and all those things were said then, but people aren't really listening that much.
No.
A little too much at that point.
See, something,
I mean, we just won a tournament that we were winning games by 8-10 goals. So everybody was happier and everything,
Well, obviously, when you're winning, they don't complain. They're happy, and then they're doubting when you're losing, and you can't control outcomes. So the one thing Jordan does, and I'm recommending it to people, he writes a weekly blog on TeamSnap. And that, in effect, tells all the parents and the players what they've worked on, what they're doing, and what they're going to be doing for the next week. And I don't know if you've received any feedback, Jordan, but I see that as the similar to Tom bringing them into the room and explaining everything. You're keeping them, you're communicating with them in terms of telling them about what you're doing or what you're working on.
Send out the practice plans all the time.
Yeah, well, the practice plans that,
And also sometimes a little blurb about what
yeah,
in the chat, you know, what's been happening and this kind of stuff, but not as regular as what you say Jordan did. But of course,
Jordan,
communication is the key thing. But
yeah.
you know, it's still a team, and they still tie everything in the parents to wins, losses.
Yeah. Jordan, can you speak to when you came up with that weekly blog and what motivated you to do it and how it worked for you?
Yeah, well, I've used it for a lot of years, right back to when I started with the U15 AAA female. And what it was I've used it with my staff at my school, weekly update of what we're going to do that week. Some kudos on what happened in the week before for what people had done and that sort of thing, and just kind of set up the week. And I was getting a little bit of roundabout feedback about some parents and not quite understanding what we were doing. So I thought, oh, well, I'll try it. And so I started doing it then. And now with my current situations, I do it with sending it out, as you said, through Team Snap. And the way I write it is I write it like I'm writing to my players, because that's who it is designed for. But I also know that when you send it out via Team Snap, that every parent has access to it as well. And that piece. So it's basically all it is it goes back to Jungle Jim Hunter's philosophy on the cycle of improvement, where you've got preparation, then you've got competition, then you've got reflection, then you've got preparation, competition, reflection. So it's okay. So typically I send it out on a Monday morning following a weekend where we had competition. So it's talks a little bit about the competition, not much, usually reflection about what we need to work on, and then about the preparation that we'll be doing that week. And so that's what goes out every week. And then I do post my practice plans on Team Snap as well for every practice. And I know that there's some parents that look at them and some that don't. Some players, they dig them up, bring them up on their phone before practice, and that I post them in the dressing rooms as well. But they'll bring them up on their way to the rink so they know what we're doing and that sort of piece too. But it's we've gotten to a point where that it's essential to have more communication rather than less. And does it mean that everything goes great? No, it doesn't. There's still going to be people that disagree with what I'm doing, and that piece. But one of the interesting aspects that happened way back when I was first using it was a parent brought a concern to our coach director, and the coach director basically said, well, did you know that was what he was planning on doing? And the parent said, well, yeah, he sends it out in a weekly email. And the coach director said, okay. So he communicated what he was going to do. Did he do what he said he was going to do? And they said, yeah. And he said, okay. So he communicated what he was going to do. Then he did what he said he was going to do. And he said, I see no problem in that. He goes, yeah, but still, I don't like what they're doing. And he said, well, that's not yours to like or not like. He said, he's clearly communicating to it. He's doing what he says he's going to do. So if either of those two things drop off, he goes, then you have a grounds for concern. Right now, I see you having no grounds for concern. Have a good day. So it does help out a little bit when you communicate as much as you can.
Well, I'm glad you're both on because, and I don't know, Greg, if you work with minor hockey enough, my biggest concern is how soon do you play the best players more often than the other ones? Is it the first week of the season, the first month, the second month? And I'm sitting back and saying at U13 this year, it started quite early because the difference in ability at U13 on the teams this year seems to be, with 3 teams, a bigger range. So the coaches, to a different degree, have managed their bench and identified roles, but some of the key players, can be out there more often and you'll get a result, but you're not going to develop the others. So, Jordan, you've been there and done that at every age level. And now, moving up to the AAA team, you seem to have come full circle in terms of appreciating everybody playing a role and feeling valued. And at what point do you create roles and designate roles?
That's a interesting question, Wally. It totally depends on the team, I think. Working with people like yourself and Dan McDonald and others, Kerry Bracco and Tom and others that have all been good enough to share their philosophies and ideologies with me. I really like to go with the idea that if it's about development, every player has to be able to play in all situations, have the opportunity to learn in all situations. So typically what I like to do is everybody gets that opportunity to play until at least Christmas. This year we went a little deeper than that. We went to the end of January, actually, because our roster was injured too much, in my belief, to cut it off. That we were finally getting back to a full roster in the month of January, so we could see everybody in all situations. The interesting one is what Kim was talking about with the difference between structure and systems. So early on, I use structure on power play and penalty kill rather than a system with firm setups and things like that. And it's been interesting that since I've gone to more systems play, our power play actually dropped off than what it was before. Our penalty kill has stayed the same, but our power play has dropped off a bit. So I'm thinking that I'm going to go back the other way and just say, hey, what were we doing before? How were we being creative? How were we supporting the puck? And that use the setups when you feel that they will work. But otherwise, let's go back to a little bit of free play with it because they were more creative that way. But that sort of thing. And when it comes to roles and that, Wally, I really believe that players have to play. Like I will challenge anyone to look at my Instat and put it against anyone's on players being having the opportunity to play. Meaning that I'll find ways for kids to get on the ice and that there's no way that I would be comfortable with having some players at 23 forwards at 23 minutes and some at 7. Like that's to me doesn't talk about development. That's coaching for an outcome. We still want the outcome, but it's still developmental. And when I'm selecting, these are coach pick teams. So if I'm selecting them to the team, it's my job as a coach to develop them between the time they're selected in August, September, till we get to playoffs here in March. That if I have done my job, I should be comfortable with them playing a regular shift. If I haven't done my job and I'm looking at it and going, I'm going to short my bench and that, down to where I'm not putting players on the ice during a regular shift, then I really don't feel that I must have done the job right to develop them. So I'll take that on that way. But yes, there are those that believe that you can get down to 3-line hockey, but we've seen it in the NHL and that the best teams are usually the ones that are using the majority of their bench. And so it's
What do you guys think about switching positions? Like, I've got some players that I really would love to put in different positions, knowing they're probably going to fail at it, but with that comes great growth and learning.
Yeah, and I have used players in different positions at times. Parents you've got to communicate well with the parents on that one, because they will be giving you a little bit of side eye, but just out of need, sometimes we've ended up throwing a forward back on D, or the other way. I've gone the other way with throwing a D up on forward. And then the other piece with it is I actually have a player this year that she played defense her entire career up to this point, and here she is as a second-year player at U18 and playing as a forward, and she's much better as a forward. And it was just one of those pieces that recognizing that. I think at the youngest age we do kids a disservice by playing them in positions. Because like if you talk to like Tom has always said, it should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hockey, and I think that there's more growth in the game that way, or more development in players that way too. So, but yeah, I don't mind it shifting players because well, actually I would say because partly it happened to me as a player later on in my career, where a coach we were getting on a bus to go to another place, and he said, so you're playing D tonight, and I'd never played defense, and I said, yeah, right, and I kind of laughed, and he goes, no man, we're short, we need you. And I said, well, I've never played D. His response to me was the same thing I said to a player here this last season. When I asked her to go from forward to D, I said, you skate the game well enough that you'll be able to handle it. And he said, just keep them to the outside and protect between the dots. And it's a little bit of an adventure, but that player became a heck of a lot better for it. I know that I became a better player because of it too. So, yeah.
That's cool. I actually like that idea of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's something that I've done particularly early in any season that I have. It's kind of like we're installing just, general concepts, like having a group of 5 go 5 times in a row, but you have to do a different role each time. And just having a different view from all the different roles and understanding how do I make that person's job easier versus how do I make that painful. And just the learnings that come from seeing the ice from different positions. I think that's like super critical for just developing awareness of your job, but also others' jobs.
Greg, I'll comment on that. And Alberta hockey, they have 6 zones, and they pick players to make teams. They'll ultimately end up picking enough players, 40 from 120 players, to come to a summer camp. So when they're picking those players, we're finding that the players that play defense see the ice and play the game with a higher hockey IQ. So they ended up picking teams with 8 defensemen and not your normal 6 and 4 forward lines, because the 2 defensemen can play forward. They're just finding they're smarter hockey players. Now, the other side of the coin is, and I think Dom might agree with me on this, you only line up for a face-off. In theory, when the game's on, you're first, second, third, fourth, or fifth. But you're right, the discomfort of being assigned to start at a position you're uncomfortable with, I think it's something worth experimenting with. I mean, you've done it, have you?
Yeah, I've always like moved players around. I've always felt that's been a beneficial thing, especially when like in high school, there's some games where they literally just don't matter. Like it's great, everyone loves to win, but truly it doesn't matter. So everyone plays in something new or different. And I've heard from some coaches where they've got, I forget what they called it, but like the flip flop game where 6 players go back and play defense and the 6 defenders come up and play forward. And, you know, like that's part of it. And he schedules it out, circles it on the calendar. Everyone knows it's coming. Which I think's, you know, good communication, getting in front of it early and letting the parents and players know the benefits. And I still get players, even if you tell them all the benefits, they go kicking and screaming after the fact. That you know, without a doubt, 100% of the time are like, okay, that worked out well. I learned a lot. I'm glad that I went through that experience. But yeah, definitely a lot of kicking and screaming with some players.
I'm wondering, Peter Whitney, we haven't heard from you over the whole thing. I'm sorry, I should have asked for your opinion. I don't know if you're back on or not. Peter, are you there?
Saw it, he had to call it that. It's not a protest play. So they took the goal away.
Peter, you're really hard to hear.
Then we scored.
That's Tom in the background. Wally.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, Tom, the idea of position switching and interchange. What's your thoughts?
Tell you the truth.
Sounds like he's on a different conversation. But anyways, I'm a huge fan of it. Wall, have you tested around with it a little bit or seen it even at the national? Like I always remember Scotty Bowman would have different players play in different positions in practice, particularly when he was with the Red Wings. And then Fedorov ended up playing defense at one point. And I know like when he was in Columbus, he played quite a few games defense only.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some that will be able to play any position. And, you know, I think it may be easier for a forward to go back on defense if they're a good skater and a smart player. But my own personal experience playing with the national team as a forward, but then playing in an international tournament with a senior team that went to the Allen Cup. The coach had me play defense because I could skate and see the ice, and didn't bother me at all. I had more room and time and space, and I did play defense in that tournament, but it's the only time I did. I didn't play it all the time. So I really appreciated him recognizing that I was suited to it because I could skate, and it does make a difference. It's just interesting how, generally speaking, players seem to pick up on things from the back end. They have more time and space back there, and they see the ice, sort of like a back catcher sees the field, and it's really
The one thing I will say is a lot of times if you move defensemen to forward, two things stick out to me of things that are very much not picked up on by them. One is like skating to the puck. A lot of times it's like waiting for the puck to get to you rather than cutting in front of the defender and skating to the puck. For whatever reason, seems to be something I see quite often. That's number one. And number two is that like look behind in the rush. Like they see everything beside and forward, but they struggle to see the space and understand like hitting the trailer or
yeah.
you know cutting off the back check, whatever that may be. So those are two things that I noticed from defensemen going to play forwards. It's a common struggle at first.
Yeah. Now, I don't know whether it was one of your your blogs, but you talked about shoulder checking, and the thing that impressed me about that blog was shoulder checking in the neutral zone, and being aware what was coming later. I think that's advanced thinking, and I think definitely at the highest level, the awareness piece of having eyes literally in the back of your head is very important, not just as a defenseman going back for a puck. So it's it's all really, really important stuff. So
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I'm trying to get rid of my whistle completely. I've gotten rid of my whiteboard completely, but I've yet to figure out how to completely get rid of the whistle. But getting close, getting closer. Got to look around to start drills and activities and pay attention and the flow of things. There's a lot of benefits to it. So that
Yeah.
I have to roll, but I'll leave on those parting words. Thanks, Wally, for
Okay.
putting this on. Awesome as always.
Really good. Take care, Craig. Talk to you later. Well, Jordan, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no problem, Wally. It was lots of good, interesting stuff there. And do you have an extra $8 million in your pockets?
Well, I wish.
That's what that dome over top of the football field at Shouldice cost.
Yeah.
That's where I started my day, was taking a look at that one, because we're supposed to be getting an artificial turf field out at that school, but if you had a dome that you put over, it's a seasonal dome. It goes up in November and comes down here in May.
Yeah.
And but it's a big undertaking.
Any chance?
Well, you need the $8 million to start, and then and then the operational monies will come after that.
Well, doesn't grow on trees, I don't think.
No, that's for sure. So, but yeah, we're skating at Father David Bauer Friday at 5:15, and then at Murray Copod on Sunday, and then we're back to preparation for the first round of playoffs for us the following weekend. So everybody's healthy, so it should be okay.
That's good. That's good.
I had to step out. I got a call from Germany just now. Wally, you asked me to find a place for what's her name to play?
Lori Coleman?
Yeah. And anyways, she's gonna send me these numbers.
Yeah.
And maybe you can pass it on.
I will. Okay.
Or and it's possibility in Germany and in Switzerland.
Yeah. Well, look, guys, been a great session. Now I'm going to give Peter one last chance, see if he can join us. And I'd just like to ask him a question or two, but if he's not there, that's fine. Peter, are you there? Okay. All right, guys, it's 2 hours, 25 minutes, 36 seconds, and it's been a great session. I'm so glad Al got on. He's having headache problems and some digestive problems, but I'm just trying to privately talk to him and record his thoughts, because the guy's been there and done that. And what he's doing with young children, what he's been doing for such a long time, is stuff that we're beginning to do now. So looking forward to meeting up with Al. I may go over there tomorrow, Jordan. I don't know if you're interested in joining me, but I'll keep you informed.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
Talk to you later.
See you, everybody. Bye-bye.